I know it's not popular opinion to constantly blame the housing crisis on planning and not on developers or even cost of construction. And I'm not saying this to imply that those issues are not real, but when we consider that these are global issues that pertain to each and individual countries, what makes the real difference is how in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and Nigeria especially, the housing crisis is particularly being worsened by poor planning. So what is it in planning that is wrong? Or how and why is our planning making housing worse? So we can spin this in many ways, but it comes down to fundamentally doing planning for other reasons other than the one thing, the most important singular human need, the very thing behind everything, how we work, whether we do double shifts, multiple shifts, where we live, what we study, what we want to become, how we do it, comes down to one single thing. And that is the one thing that planning misses. And this is dignity. And unless we restore planning to being about dignity, a 50 million real estate will keep selling for 150 or 250 million. And to make this make sense, let me not even speak too much grammar. Let me just show you. Let me create an illustration that helps you understand what I mean by this. And thereafter, I will show you real life example of how good city planning influences affordable housing and how this works in real life to the benefit and betterment of people. So let's start with the fact that planning is not the drawing of master plan, neither is it the drawing of layout, but it's simply how we create, combine, manage, and use these three categories of infrastructure to support and improve living conditions and even lifestyle of people. So every form of planning falls within these categories of the physical infrastructure, social infrastructure, and economic infrastructure. Every form or every kind of infrastructure that we have, that we know, that we talk about, or that we lack, falls within these three. And they function and interact with one another just like the human body. The physical infrastructure is like the skeleton that supports how things work. Amenities, transportation, energy, water, all of this falls within this category. Then we have the social infrastructure, which is like the heart that pumps blood, that holds life, and it caters to the welfare, well-being, security, safety, and health of the people. Then, economic infrastructure is like the brain or brain box that powers and controls everything. It covers how money is made, how wealth is transferred, how value is created and converted. This covers employment, wealth creation, and even the technology of how all of this is done. And then it gets interesting from here because at the intersection of physical and social infrastructure, we have sustainability. That is how well people live. These are the physical structures that improve quality of life, like emergency services, child services, health services, housing, and so on. Then at the intersection of physical and economic infrastructure is connectivity, how people reach the things that help them achieve economic mobility, economic productivity. This is where we provide things or opportunities that support logistics, commerce, trade, and communication. And lastly, at the intersection of social and economic infrastructure is everything that supports human capital, social stability, and economic productivity. This is where we now focus on skill acquisition, vocation, entrepreneurship, jobs, civic system, and governance. And from this illustration, you now see that there is a central part that leaves us with one part, which is why all of these interdependence and relationships make sense. At the center of it all is the people and their need for dignity. Dignity as they pursue economic opportunities, dignity in how they live, dignity as they pursue social stability, and the dignity of reliability in assurance that they can achieve their physical needs. So why does all these illustrations and diagrams matter? It matters because every element of our planning, and in this case, which transcends just city planning, to connect economic planning, financial planning, fiscal planning, governance, and even politics, and every form of planning has not been set up about solving, providing, or supporting the people's needs for dignity. It has instead been about revenue rather than the needs of the people that it's meant to serve. As I promised earlier, let me show you physical proofs of where and how this works. So I recently visited Morocco, partly for the AFCON and also for personal errands. And for a country with less GDP and even less mineral resources than Nigeria, Morocco really did well, at least from a visitor's perspective, with its planning. And as we dive into how they've made this happen, I will also show you how little things and simple planning changes all connect to a bigger picture, and especially to the diagram that we created earlier, and how all this contributes mainly and particularly to creating a better living standard for the people and the residents of the country. So to make this as relatable as possible, let's start with primary school social studies, where we learned the meaning of basic infrastructure. I remember my class teacher then would say, you need at least places to live, how to make a living, how to get here and there, and the things that support daily living ought to be present for you to have human settlement. Then another thing he would also say is that all these four items need one another to function properly, as you can't have one without the other. Even though then he probably didn't know that what he was describing was the interdependence and interrelationship of physical, social, and economic infrastructure. This interdependence and relationship is what Morocco has unlocked for its people with planning. So without saying too much, the first thing you would notice in Morocco is that the public transportation system and facilities work. Keyword being systems and facilities. You remember I've said it over and over that transportation is the bedrock and cornerstone on which any meaningful planning and housing intervention would thrive. And what Morocco has done is use transportation to spearhead development, to spearhead planning, to spearhead economic mobility and access to opportunities. And what the country or the cities have done by interweaving transportation into this planning fabric, because whether you are commuting within the city or across several cities, every mode of transportation that you need, from taxis, cabs, trams, train, high-speed train, is all available, provided, managed, and sponsored by government. So on one side is the flexibility of means of transportation, and on the other side is the ability of the government to control the prices for affordability. But this conversation is not even about transportation, but rather about the most interesting thing that is happening behind this flexibility in means and modes of transportation is the sporadic and massive growth of organic development. So what is organic development, and how may it differ or be similar to what we know or we don't know? Again, let's start from what we know. Most of us are familiar with ready-made housing, either by developer or government. The layout is planned, buildings are built, commissioned, and then buyers or owners take them up. And whenever we talk about housing, this picture-perfect, moving-ready housing is what often comes to mind. Now, organic development, on the other hand, means that after you've planned how that place will look in the future, instead of building it for them, you allow them to build it themselves as it fits their budget and income. So the time all they can afford is a room, they build it. When they have enough to add an extra floor, they also do. It's basically government giving the people a foothold to help themselves solve their housing problems as it fits their income. All within different levels of government or planning, monitoring, control, or support. And that is what makes this different from slums or informal settlements, the element of government control. Because slum, on the other hand, happens spontaneously without government control or participation. And this is how simple it is. And not because it is a new idea, but simply because of how the country uses it to give its people access to affordable home ownership. Because what the country has achieved is use sites and services to make housing easy and more affordable for its people. This in particular is how it stands in sharp contrast to Lagos, where everyone is in a race for a full or half plot or even more. What they've done instead is make access to smaller pieces of land affordable and available to their people. So the proposed location is planned into layouts, and these layouts come with infrastructure from roads to drainage to electricity to water are already pre-installed. Then the land is subdivided into little fractions as low as 50, 60 square meters that their residents can easily develop with time. So based on income level or even zoning or development pattern, the people can then access land and build as it fits their income without having to worry about facilities or amenities. And the government does not have to worry so much about revenue because it has been pre-planned and everybody can be charged as they connect to these services at whatever stage of their completion. This flexibility is exactly what Petit House Plot Share helps users and owners achieve, most especially the flexibility of building their homes as it fits their income and convenience. So that is organic development and one of the many ways that it can be expressed. And the main thing that this organic development achieves, which is what I want you to pay attention to, is that because of the access to home ownership, the flexibility that comes with it, and the access to transportation, the reliability and dependability of the public intracity and intercity transportation systems, the people therefore no longer have to struggle or hustle endlessly to live in the popular cities of Rabat or Casablanca, and they can live in these other cities, other towns that fit their income, that fit their realities. Because thanks to these diverse, flexible, and affordable public transportation systems, they can then live anywhere while they work or pursue economic opportunities in any of the other cities. So regardless of where they live, because transportation is now reliable, dependable, predictable, and affordable, housing also becomes accessible, affordable, and predictable. And this is how it connects back to our illustration. You see, housing falls under physical infrastructure, but it is also heavily influenced by both social and economic infrastructure and even the other amenities that fall within physical infrastructure. And the only singular denominator that connects all of these elements together is planning. So you see why the point of planning is not to create picture perfect, Instagram ready cities. Yes, our cities must look beautiful, but that is not the point of planning. The main goal behind planning is to help people, irrespective of their income or social class, to live, work, interact, and connect in dignity. Of course, I'm always careful to draw parallels between Nigeria and other countries. But luckily, this is also another country whose background and history is almost equal or similar in some ways to Nigeria's history and background. In fact, I'm particularly glad that Nigeria has more economic capacity, more economic advantages, more economic potentials than the country it's being compared to, if they too can make planning work better for their citizens. I'm sure Nigeria can do the same, and in fact, even do better. So, if we need better housing, let's make our planning first about people and dignity before revenue. Let's make our economic policies, our infrastructure planning more about systems that are functional, reliable, and dependable than about just meeting political campaign promises. To solve the Nigerian housing crisis, we must empower the people to live, work, and access opportunities in dignity. I hope this helps.